Welcome to the Awaken Organization.
Welcome to the Awakened Organization.
I'm Peter Gigario.
And I'm Jeremy Staten. And today we have the honor to meet another awesome business owner who's living in a way that is changing the world and has been for decades.
Yeah, Mike's been running climate sustainability practice before it was cool, as Jeremy will point out, and helping organizations minimize their footprint and create a more sustainable world. He's running actually 4 organizations, all linked together, whether it's be youth leadership or networking in the climate space or putting on events to bring people together. His whole life's been dedicated to making this planet a more sustainable and better place to live. So, you wouldn't want to miss it. If you care about this planet, you should stay here. Mike, welcome to the Awakened Organization podcast. Thank you for being here. Really excited to have you. You've got a lot that you've accomplished in your career, and I'm glad to call myself a friend of yours. Jeremy and I are psyched that you're here and to go through a little bit about what you and your team have done over the past 30 years.
Yeah,
give or take a year.
Time.
Yeah, it's been a while. You're like an original gangster of climate change, I feel, that we've got with us. You were there before it was cool and trendy.
Yeah.
But we've got lots to unpack with you over the course of our chat today. And so, but maybe for the audience and for us, if you could just, you don't have one purpose-driven organization, you have 4. You decided to go big or go home. So maybe you could just give us a bit of an overview of the 4 organizations that you're a part of and running.
Yeah, for sure. Well, great being here. Thanks, Jeremy and Peter. It's awesome to join you. So yeah, I'm Mike Gerbis. I'm the CEO of a group of organizations, which we refer to as a constellation often. It drives my marketing people crazy, but they are a group. It's based on a constellation business model where each organization has a separate mission, but we're all focused along a common vision. And that vision is to create a sustainable, prosperous, and socially just future in a generation. So the 4 organizations, the largest, the Delphi Group, strategic consulting firm, particularly here in Canada, although we're expanding into the US. We have service lines around corporate sustainability, climate change risk management, clean tech innovation, and green and circular economy. And we are one of the first. We've been doing this since 1988. And I always tell people they know us because they're in a hotel and hanging up their towels or putting a card on their bed. And that's the first project we did back in 1988. So wow. We've been doing sustainability well before this big takeoff point. The second group is called the Globe Series. That's our convening organization, and it's been bringing people together for, again, 30 years, since 1990, in big and small events, all about trying to drive forward the dialogue around the critical issues like climate change, and most importantly, drive an action, to make a difference. The third organization, the Canadian Business for Social Responsibility, they came under our constellation just a few years ago. They're not-for-profit, again, been around 25 years or so. And it stands for Canadian Business for Social Responsibility, which is membership-based organization. We have about 60 members. And again, it's all about advancing corporate sustainability. So it's a peer-to-peer learning organization like tech. So these are executives that are driven to advance sustainability. And then Leading Change, founded in 93 out of Delphi, made it into a not-for-profit, and it's all about activating youth and providing mentorship and leadership training for those young people. And when I say young, sort of in their early careers, 20s and mid-30s, that are trying to make a positive difference. So they all work together, and the idea is that we have more impact and more influence in shifting the economy.
Yeah, that's Every time I hear about that, it stresses me out, Mike. That's a lot going on. I know you've got an amazing team, but I'm like, holy crap, that is one hell of an ecosystem you've built. Maybe we do want to talk a bit about those, but when did you know you personally wanted to literally save the planet and change the world? You know, there's one that's doing the work that you're doing now that we'll talk about a bit after, but you personally, was there like a moment or a series of moments where you're like, I need to be doing something of meaning with my time here on the planet?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. So my dad says that I've always had a slightly green bent, but I always remember the shift occurred when I took a course, a geography course. I was taking chemical engineering at Queen's and took a geography course, and the prof got right into the environment, and that's when I got jazzed up and sort of shifted and took a master's of environmental engineering, and then started my own first business out of school in waste reduction, pollution prevention type stuff. So that's kind of the turning point, early 20s, where I really jumped off and said, let's go do this, or try anyways.
Was there a big community around that back then? Because I know you're a young man, but that's a couple years ago, before everything was trendy and that we see now.
No, it certainly wasn't. I mean, waste at the time, waste reduction, industrial ecology, pollution prevention, these were the concepts back then. But it was a small community. And in fact, that's why I founded Leading Change back in 2003. Even by then, I found that community was quite small. It was just starting to take off in the early 2000s, and people didn't have a network. So they didn't have a place to go to share successes or cry, when you got another climate change paper released or that. And so the idea was to start to build a network of young people that could then really, educate one another, engage one another, and most importantly, really empower one another to make more change, positive change.
Yeah, that's cool. I love how you're creating the network. Not just yourself, but that impact, that ripple effect that you've got going on with the other leaders, whether people of our age or the young next generation coming up. Jeremy, you hop in here anytime.
Yeah. So I'm particularly curious about this idea of kind of cultivating an ecosystem of like-minded organizations. And so, just within my own organization, we've gone through our vendor list and tried to find, B Corp or other purpose-driven, alternative vendors to replace everything we do, from banking to finance to whatever it is, legal, et cetera. And we've done a good job. There's quite a bigger ecosystem now than there was even 10 years ago. But I'm curious if how this ecosystem is formed for you, and whether you see there's, more opportunity. I haven't felt that B Lab has particularly been the one to facilitate that process. Almost, like you're talking about this, kind of peer group, and also this, advisory mentorship group of bringing folks into the fold. I'm just curious from your perspective, where's the ecosystem now, and where do you see it going?
Yeah. So, I mean, the ecosystem is certainly, like, if you talk about sustainability, that kind of ecosystem, and B Lab being an incredible part. I mean, you think of how much it's grown in that. It has certainly matured and gotten a lot more sophisticated. I think from my perspective, though, there's still a need, as anything, that there's a need for leadership, and there's a need to be intentional, right? So we all have busy jobs. We talked about that at the beginning, right? Family lives, jobs, and fostering an ecosystem, whether it's our kind of constellation internally, or it's networking with B Labs as you've done, or B Corps as you've done, takes time, right? Takes effort, takes work. You got to roll up the sleeves. You got to get over the different cultures, the personalities, the visions, what you think, where you should go, et cetera. when you do that, it's so powerful, right? Like that's the only way we're going to solve the problems that we're facing right now is together. We're not going to do this on our own, whether we're a small firm like us, 90 people, or a massive, multinational with 50,000, still not going to solve it alone. We got to do this together. And that's the one thing that's got me, quite excited. Peter can tell you is that I'm seeing that more and more people are getting excited and jumping on board, and different perspectives, right? People who haven't even thought about this stuff in the past are now like, oh, wait a minute, we need to do something, and that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited by it. And I'm seeing a lot of that momentum as well. I'm wondering if there's room for almost like a, Better Business Bureau accreditation or some other or Chamber of Commerce or something for, sustainability oriented businesses to, really have a place for that ecosystem to sit that's broader than just a B Lab or, than one of these one-off orgs that's just like holds it all. Because I completely agree. The only way that we survive all of this is if all business is used as a force for good and all organizations are oriented towards a common future that we want to see happen.
And that's why it's important, though, just to build on what you said, Jeremy, is you have to be careful of putting us all into a pot, because then it's our own echo chamber, right? So we get like our Globe Series events bring, the big one brings in 2,000 people, registrants. And the challenge is that 80-90% of them, we're all converted. We're all working towards the same goal. So that's great because it, gets you jacked up and you're pumped and you want to make a change and you're getting together and making deals. However, there's this whole other ecosystem that's still not there. And we got to figure out how to get them, the other piece of the bell curve in there and talking and learning, okay, why isn't it moving forward? Okay, how do we solve that? What do we do? And I don't mean the naysayers, the small end of the tail at one end. We're not going to convince them, but I mean the vast majority in the middle who are just, working their job, creating widgets, driving finance, doing IT, whatever, but they don't see the connection,
What do you think, Mike's the barrier, speaking of your bell curve there, between the early adopters, which sad to say, I'd even say your Globe Series events, you still are the early part of the people who are, there's a consciousness, but there's very few people doing shit about it, right? Let's be honest. So what's that barrier between that middle of the bell curve in your mind?
Wow, this could be a 2-day workshop, right? The system, I'll just say it this way and see what you guys think. The system is not set up to incent good behavior, right? Like our economic system doesn't reward and doesn't define success as helping, local community and get kids out of poverty, right? It doesn't help, or it doesn't reward me for spending a whole bunch of extra money to make sure that toxic waste that I generate is dealt with properly and recycled if possible. And right, it doesn't incent that right now. And so it's hard for people to bring what they do at home. I always say, people, you're not dumping garbage in your own backyard, right? Like you're not, I almost said taking a dump anyway, but you're not, right? Like you're not doing things. You don't treat your family, I know I guess some do, but you're not treating your family and friends with disrespect and, right, getting them to do paying them $14 an hour while, you're making tens of millions of dollars a day. Like it just, right, it's backwards, right? And the system is broken in my belief. That's a philosophical anyway piece.
But usually that's where it starts, right? Is that shift in perspective, which is the whole raison d'être, the reason for being of the B Corp, is to shift past that profit motive, sole shareholder motive, profit motive idea to get to the multi-stakeholder lens, which is we're seeing growing, but is still, a small percentage, I guess, of total GDP, quote unquote.
It is, because how do you think of even millennials, right? I hear this all the time. They're purpose driven. They want to have purpose. They want to be in organizations that have purpose. But if you can't pay the bills, you can't even cover the rent or food, right? It's hard to stick, it's hard to stay in that, right?
You can't afford to stay on mission. You're right. Like, it's just, if you can't get a living wage, you got to go do something else.
Right. Yeah. So this is super interesting to me. So, sorry, I've got like a thought experiment that's bubbling up as you're talking, Mike. It's very compelling for me. Is like this idea of like a larger ecosystem, and you're talking about the outside of, the fringe of this circle being, where it is exposed to the majority of the bell curve, being that it needs to grow. We need to grow this circle. And I agree. And I'm wondering, as you're speaking about kind of the specific systemic issues, if this ecosystem were organized so that, say, all folks could lean and push that lever in one direction towards some change, could something happen, right? So some organization at a broader level to prioritize some things that might be imperatives for our future. Is there the ability to actually fix some of that system, right? If you get enough folks enrolled and on board, even if it's, a minority in the greater scheme, is it enough? And this is kind of where I'm wondering of like, so is it enough? And then also, if there's an in crowd, so if I'm giving discounts, which we do to other purpose aligned businesses, great, we'll work with whoever, we'll talk to other companies, and they'll find out that we offer a discount, and then they'll, what's that? Well, here, this is why we would do it. And then maybe there is an incentive to help kids on the street, or there is an incentive to deal with that toxic waste, because now your ecosystem of business partners will give you a discount and incentivize you to do that, right? So maybe there is enough of an ecosystem at some point where the critical mass can actually enable a microeconomy within the larger economy that supports that positive future.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and I think you're already seeing that with all kinds of drivers, right? There are so many drivers that are converging, which are the analogy I always use when I'm talking to students is, change is the only constant in life other than death and birth, and yet we fight it all the way, right? And the massive changes is like rolling a snowball. At first, you're bending over and it's hard, and then it gets bigger and you're pushing it up the hill, and oh my gosh, it's inertia, right? Of change is pushing, but you get it to the top, and then you just give it a little, and off it goes, right? And all change, at least from my perspective in history, has been like that, right? It's hard, then something happens, and then you get the speed down the hill. And so what you're talking about is happening all over the place, right? Companies are putting in green procurement policies. So that's an incentive, right? Or they're mandating it. Government regulations. Young people are demanding that you have a purpose, that you're dealing with sustainability, right? And so on, right? We go on for hours, like the finance industry, which to me is the biggest change agent right now in this, is driving the cost of capital up if you're not taking care of climate risk and that, right? So it's all happening. It's just, can we get it up to the top of that hill to see it, to see it really take off and really roll down before the shit hits the fan, Yeah.
There's a lot of doom and gloom out there, Mike, and we've talked a bit about that over the years. You see a glimmer of hope in all of that, like, because, you look at the trends and everybody think there's going to be some miraculous cure to climate change. We're going like on these technological changes versus changing our living habits. everybody says they have an opinion or feels the world needs to hear their opinion. You're actually one that I care about because you might be educated and work in the space. So it's actually credible. What are your thoughts on that? And I know it's a loaded question. But, is there a glimmer of hope for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I'm a believer, and you just think of what humans have done in history, right? Let's leave the bad out. Let's talk about the good. But, when they put their ingenuity, when we as a species put our ingenuity behind something, and we put our desire to fly like the birds or go to the moon, right? Or go to the depths of the ocean, we do it, right? We figure it out, right? And this is what's happening when the opportunity is there and presented, right? So solar power can outcompete coal now in the southern U.S. and probably mid-U.S. now without even blinking, right? We've made that ingenuity, we've made that change. So what gives me hope is that desire, right? And the ingenuity of the human spirit, number one. Number two, the young people, as always, the change happens with the young, are coming up and demanding that change, right? And number three, the money is starting to get on board, right? So back to that system is broken, but if the money is starting to change where you have banks, completely changing their investment portfolio and funds looking to put in climate risk screens and so on, you will start to get that huge change. At the same time, though, I am still a believer that the change that when I did that with my finger for the roll to go down is usually a point in time where there's a bit of a collapse, right? There's a reset of some kind. And I think that will come. And that means, some pain in that. But that's how change happens, right? To us personally, we have to have pain before we change, right? Or it happens as an organization or a country or democracy, right? And so I think that we are going to go through some pain, but we will emerge out the other side because of our ingenuity, our community spirit, our, just desire. We're mostly good people. Vast majority of us are good people.
It would be nice, though, if we didn't feel like we needed to actually touch the stove to know it was hot and going to burn us and for shit to absolutely collapse before we fixed it. But I guess human nature might be a longer haul in changing.
Yeah. It's just who we are, I think. As someone told me, it's evolution. It's Darwin's theory there. We just, it's just who we are.
So, Mike, you're, from the sounds of it, you've got purpose in your DNA. You've had it there for a while. Why did you feel it necessary to go after your B Corp accreditation? Like you were already doing it, living it. Well, why was that important to you? Because
it's really important. Just like we tell our clients, you gotta measure things, right? You gotta assess yourself. It's easy to say. And I often hear people say, oh, we're doing lots. We're just not telling people about it or communicating. Well, really? Are you? Like, let's figure out some standard or measurement. And then you realize, oh, geez, we're not doing so great in this area, right? And so the B Corp, number one, made us dive in and dissect what we were doing, right? Number two is the communication piece is important. Back to Jeremy's comment, right? Like you have to get out and put a stake in the ground and say, no, this is important. We don't make all our decisions based on the fiduciary responsibility of our board and to make profit. And why would we? Like I live in a community. Why would I only base everything on profit, right? So sticking that B Corp, I don't know about you, Jeremy and Peter, if you guys have had the same, but as soon as I did it, then I had all kinds of conversations with people. Well, totally. Why would you do that? What do you mean? Why would you? What is a B Corp, right?
I hear that all the time. We're in our application process, Mike, and I just say that, and I'm astounded by people. Oh, what is that? And then they all want to learn more because I think in their heart of hearts, they want to get there. Like people, I'm with you. People are inherently good. And I'm going to keep believing it. Like Einstein said, the biggest choice we'll ever make in our lives is whether we see the universe as friendly or hostile.
Yeah.
I'm sticking to friendly like crazy, but I think it just opens that dialogue.
I agree.
Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off there. You're going to say a little bit more on that. I'm sure like it's allowed you to educate people on that there's another way beyond, because you're living it, your business, like, in Jeremy's case, he's an IT company that's a B Corp. You're a B Corp that's doing directly, not just your CSR policies or how you treat your people. Your work in and of itself is sustainable work, right?
Yeah, it is, but it doesn't mean we've got it perfect, and we're nowhere near that, right?
What? Don't shatter my bubble, Mike. Don't mess with me
here. You need to be tested, right? So, diversity inclusion has been a great area, to dive into when, you look at our ownership. We're 4 white people, and we've got 1 woman and 3 guys. Unless you're intentional, sometimes you can't get the change that you seek, right?
Yeah, well said.
Right. So the same with our speakers is we now have targets for, has to be 50-50 women, men, has to have a percentage of young people, has to be representative of our indigenous population, et cetera, right? So back to the B Corp, you can only do that if you stick a target there, measure it, monitor it, right? And you continually got to challenge yourself because it's hard sometimes, right? If you put out a job posting and you don't get any people of color or women applying, what do you do? Right? So now you got to look at different ways of actually putting the job description out. You got to change your whole perspective. Well, are we putting it out in the right place? Are we telling the right communities about it? Maybe LinkedIn's not the best just to post a job or whatever it is,
100%.
So, so that's what I found the B Corp. All that to say is it got us thinking differently about everything, right? Oh, well, wait a minute. Are we looking at this right?
I had a similar experience because the assessment is so well-rounded across dimensions that I was focused in a few of the dimensions, and just in going through the others, I was like, holy crap, there's a lot more we could do here. and so even just the process, and that's kind of why I like this idea of you don't even need to convert folks ahead of time. Just, maybe there's enough incentive, hopefully there's enough business incentive to differentiate and to, be part of a community that has the companies you want to work with, that you start down that process and you realize that, there's a bunch of things that we could do and should do. These are the right things to do. And even just bringing the awareness, right? That first step of awareness of going through that assessment is invaluable, right? So I definitely am appreciative of their learning model and adaptive model. So it's not the static thing that becomes outdated. I am super curious though, Mike, about, to backtrack a bit, you founded these nonprofits, or at least leading change, in the early 2000s. Were you bored? Did you not have enough to do with your other, I just can't fathom the thought of starting another business. Can you just walk me through how, you kept adding to this constellation?
Well, some of it, to be honest, some of it was, probably most of it was organic. So, leading change, for example, sat within Delphi as part of our, CSR program, right? And we would get employees to do the forum every year. And then I remember the shareholder meeting, we're like, okay, we either got to shit or get off the pot. Like we either got to infuse this thing and get it going on its own and do more, or, we continue just to play with it. And so, so you start that. Globe came to us. We had a strategic partnership with the Globe Foundation, which ran the Globe series. And the CEO was retiring, and he came to us and said, hey, do you want to run this? And that's when all of a sudden we started to put the dots together. Oh, wait a minute. like if we help our companies actually take action, then we can give them a platform where they can tell people about it, engage people about it, and get others on board. Oh, wait a minute. And we have youth that are trying to get into this career. So if we're mentoring them, then they're going to be the clients and they're going to be the next leaders of the organization. And oh yeah, we've got, at the time it was called the Excel partnership, long story, but they merged with CBSR, and they were a group of executives who are trying to advance it. So it's like a circle. And all of a sudden we thought we've got a nice flywheel concept, like Jim Collins' flywheel concept. Yeah. Right? And we can start to turn this. And then the next phase, which has been harder though, because the pandemic hit, is okay, where are the gaps that we can start to fill? So we're more E than S in our sustainability. So we're talking to a group that is the S part. Can we fill them and get them to come on board? Can we get Indigenous engagement? Can we get them to be on board? So we might not be I might not be the CEO, but they become part of the community, like you talked about, Jeremy, where you're bringing them in, and all of a sudden you can offer more and more services and perspectives for clients, and you can compete, with the big guys who jump in and throw money in a pyramid structure, but they're not authentic. It's not no disrespect to them. In the current success, they do just fine profit and making money. But
I love the idea of showing a pie chart on a dollar bill. This is how a dollar you spend with us, this is how it goes, right? Yeah. Versus our competitor. You choose, and how's that flywheel working? Just out of curiosity. So this has now been over 20 years in the making, but at least 20 years since you've assembled some pieces, some adjunct pieces to it. Has it been working as anticipated?
So just to clarify that, so it's been assembled. Globe joined us in the end of 2014, but say 2015. CBSR just joined us 3 years ago. I think it's been 2 years. The pandemic sort of throws me. So these things are, I know, I have such a skewed memory now with this pandemic thing. Anyway, so it's quite, like, the business model was only set up a few years ago, this constellation business model, because what we saw is it came to us and we kind of got it, and then we brought a firm in and they said, well, why don't you, instead of doing a branded house or a house of brands, why don't you do this constellation model? And we're like, wow, okay, I like that. And, right? It drives our marketing for, guys crazy, but we're actually going to have a name for it. We're going to launch it in the fall, and then get others to join us. But so to your point, it's starting to get traction. Because now we have companies, CN has been an amazing client of ours, or BASF, another one. CN, they have been a client of Delphi's. They come to Globe and sponsor it all the time. They support leading change and send their young people, and their executive are on members of Excel/CBSR.
Oh,
so it's right. It's starting to take hold.
Well, and I'd also argue, you don't have to give away all the numbers, Mike, but how much has your staff grown during COVID as proof in the pudding of this flywheel?
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. So, we've gone from less than 40 people before the pandemic to now we're 90. So, it's been...
I think the flywheel's working.
Yeah, it's been quite a, growth. So, and that's positive on one side, and the current
headaches on the other,
and headaches on the other of, a growing business. So,
did you have any, and this is total tangent, but I'm a very curious person. So, did you have any thoughts about limits on growth? So capping the employee size, potentially splitting, Gore and Associates has an interesting model where every time they get to 150 people, they split off an office to make sure that. Curious, did you?
Yeah, it's a great question, because we discuss it all the time,
Wow.
all the time. Like, and one of the things we've agreed is that we are not doing growth for the sake of growth. So it's not a top line or bottom line. It's intentional growth where we think we can get more impact and influence.
Yep.
But on saying that, you got to feed the beast, right? This is the challenge with growth that I hadn't experienced until we get here, but you have to feed the beast, right? Like, as you get bigger, you need more support for the higher levels. You got to put overhead on. Oh, you more overhead. You got to get more billable. You got, right?
Yeah.
And the beast is off, kind of thing. And so that fallacy for those entrepreneurs out there, you're the piece that was told me where it was like, oh, well, 10, wait till you're, 20, because at 20 it's better. And then at 20, well, you got to be 50 because 50 is, oh, no, it's 100. Yeah, well, no, it never, the challenges in that never end. They just change. Yeah. Right.
Series of painful plateaus. I can totally relate.
Yeah. They never.
That's interesting. Yeah. So have you considered a sweet spot number, just out of curiosity, in terms of,
well,
employees?
we've agreed to where my favorite saying is to slow down to speed up from tech. So we've agreed here we've kind of taken a pause, and now we're letting everything settle and get the systems in place and see how this number feels, and then decide from there, whether we go forward or go back or, stay the same. So, but we've agreed. Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting because so many people have a skewed growth orientation, especially from, venture-backed startups where it's just, we hired 400 people this year because we just have millions of dollars to spend on hiring people, and we're going to the moon. But a little bit different, right? Can be very much a meat grinder mentality where people are just a means to get you to your personal fortunes or your investors' fortunes versus creating a sustainable entity for, the impact that it's driving, the employees that, drive that impact and so on. So.
And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, but that's where I'm finding the tension is the hardest, right? Is like, we're a consulting firm with an overtime policy to director level. Like our competitors would be, are you kidding me? Like, why would you do that? Right. The idea is to, charge as much, but we're trying to maintain that progressive, sustainable culture and family. But the financial piece, reality, makes it challenging, right? Like, it's already challenging with inflation and, salaries going up, which I think they should. But it makes it harder because you're trying to charge, as you know, Jeremy, and Peter, you both know, charge a client. You got to raise that. And then, wait a minute, you only want to work 4 days a week, or you want to work, the 37 and a half hours. I would love that. How do we make that model work here? Like, and it's that constant. Yeah. And that's just the billing, right? I mean, you want to put the equitable and diversity programs in place, mental health, right? The environment piece, et cetera, generous
leave, amazing benefits, all the things, right? The cost per employee should be much higher than your competitors. I'm presuming it probably is, as ours is. And they want, I want them to have 4-day work weeks. And how do we do that? How do we achieve
that's right.
And still remain profitable enough to stay in business? So tough tensions for sure of kind of competing in the free market against folks with maybe less morals in business.
Yeah, it's definitely worth the effort. There's got to be a better way, and we all believe in it. And it's not worth going back to. I remember my dad telling me, and I've slowly brought him to the dark side of tree hugging, but the only reason an employee exists is to drive shareholder value. And believe that in his heart of hearts. And it's the way the US economy was built, and tremendous wealth. And you're like, how do you, I mean, this is a larger discussion we won't solve today. I'm just thinking that is a major, major shift even from us we made the conscious choice of, we put out our manual with our policies of how we want to treat our people and how we want to be showing up. And I refuse to call it our employee guide. There's no way. It's our team member guide. I mean, we talked about it, Jeremy, but it's just, and I started reading these articles on Forbes. I saw one on HBR, and what a different way to look at the people you're working day by day with as a team member versus your, air quotes for the people just listening, employees. Yeah. And it's that diminutive term. Like it's just such a shift. Anyways, there's shifts at all levels.
Yeah. You're right, Peter. We don't want to, like, I'll speak for myself. I don't want to change. I don't want to go back. I don't mind the heartaches and the hard lift and all that, because we're in it just like you guys. We're going to try to do the best we can. It just, you gotta, for those listening, if you want to go down the path, it's not easy. You don't just become a B Corp and all of a sudden the best employees are lined up and, everything's great. It's the same challenges everybody has.
Well, there's a price for all our choices, right, Mike? And ours might be a slight dent in profitability, but I'd argue the price of the profit motive can be a lack of fulfillment and not sleeping as well. There's a price on both sides to that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Again, this is where I come back to that ecosystem. My hope is that, when I'm selecting vendors, I'm less price sensitive if it's a sustainability oriented vendor versus not. Because again, the pie chart of that dollar, where's this going? Great. This is going to help the homeless in your community. This is going towards food drives. This is going towards living wages for all your people. This is, and so great. I feel way better about that dollar. And so I'll spend $1 with you versus 50 cents with that other person, knowing that their Glassdoor reviews are, 1.9 stars or whatever. And people hate it.
So can you, talk a little bit about, so we did a little bit of homework, and I'm going to thank Anne Catherine for helping. Even though I've known you for several years now, I found out some new things in digging into your past.
Oh, really?
So can you tell us a little bit about your climate reality project?
Yeah, that was, so that was quite a while ago. Al Gore decided he put out the inconvenient truth, and then he wanted to set up a charity. He started in the U.S. Called the Climate Reality Project. No, what was it called initially? It wasn't the Climate Reality Project. It was called something else. It'll come to me. And I was like, oh man, I gotta get on that training. He was putting on these trainings. And so long story short, myself and 20 others got to be the first Canadians to be trained. Nice. And 5 of us came up, trained on the inconvenient truth presentation. And 5 of us came back and decided we would set up the charity here. And so we set it up. I was the founding chair, and it was 2 of the hardest years of my life, I think, getting that charity established and up and going. But hey, it's one of those things that's lasted. I think there were a dozen plus around the world, and I think there's only 2 or 3 left. And Canada is one of them, because
awesome.
One of the, again, for learnings, right? Sometimes we all know that organizations have a lifespan, that birth, growth, and then maturity and death. And I was realizing that the only way we were going to survive was to merge the Climate Reality Project with another more established not-for-profit. So I negotiated with Peter, his name was at the time the president of the David Suzuki Foundation, and got them tied up. And I still think that was one of the major reasons it continued successfully to this day, is they could put the engine behind it that needed it and the grassroots support at the time. But no, something I'm very proud of. Yeah, very proud of being part of. It's an amazing group of people.
That's awesome. So also looking into your deep, dark, mostly enlightened past, at least on the internet. That's what I'll say. You do a ton of work in youth education, whether it's through Leading Change that we talked about, or at Shad, or even through some of your talks with Tech. For those in the US, Tech is the Canadian version of Vistage, which is a peer network of CEOs and leaders with the growth mindset trying to do great things. So Mike's out there on the train trying to educate, I guess, all of us of all ages. When you're talking and doing these education pieces and talking to our youth, what gives you the most hope in that? Like what energizes you coming out of these, or what's your main takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, these are always reciprocal. Like I have a number of young people I mentor, and one said that today. We talked about it. It has to be reciprocal, right? And what I get out of it is not only learning a new perspective, but I get such positive energy, right? Because let's be honest, right? In your 20s, you're not jaded yet, and your 50s like me.
Underrated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I love that piece because there's so much energy, positive energy, that they can do this. They can solve this. We can change the way we think about things. We can innovate, right? And so I love engaging younger people for just that inspiration and positive and hopefulness that they all have. And then I also like to be able to share some of the failures and pitfalls and things that, we've been through, and hopefully it helps them along their journey,
Yeah, that's why we're here.
Yeah. I got one. I'm so, again, sorry, I'm very curious about this, particularly the mentorship piece. So I too am involved in kind of a lot of, more men's work through Mankind Project, and a lot of interest around kind of boys to men and this rite of passage and mentorship in general being something that's largely been lost, and role models largely been lost. And so curious if so Leading Change sounds amazing. I'm going to find out more about it. Do you have something internally within Delphi around mentorship, and, what does that look like, and mentorship in general?
Yeah. So a couple of things. One is we have a buddy system in Delphi. So when you join with a buddy who becomes a bit of a mentor. It could be same age, older, younger, it doesn't matter, but you have a buddy system. Number two is all the partners in particular have a open door policy. And so, for example, my business partner, Bruce, who's a few years from retirement, he's starting to spend more time with the younger people in the office, or virtually, to mentor them. Number two is I tend to try to call all the staff every year during the pandemic. More importantly, as we get back together, I hold meetings virtual or in person with groups. And I always am very transparent about the strategy, but then what's working, what's not. Let's talk about life. What do you want to know, right? So there's that type of informal process. Then we have the more formal stuff, which is around our performance management. So there we actively work with the individual to develop training development programs that fit for them. The executives, however, all of them have coaching. So it's not mandated, but it's something that I have pushed because of the success at Tech and the coaching I had before. So we have these different levels of mentoring and coaching, sort of informal and formally, but it's definitely a key aspect. Absolutely.
That's inspiring.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Such a missing piece. I'm also just kind of lightning strike your constellation. Where's the green money? Where's the venture capital to fund these leaders? Where's Joel Solomon and his funds to come in and help make this a reality? Is that part of the future? Is it?
It could be. It's funny. I mean, again, I'll just be transparent. Is that's one area where we've not had a lot of strength is in the finance side, and we've just hired a young gentleman who is got some great background there, and we're working with one of the partners, as I mentioned, about potential adding them to the constellation, who would have that kind of backing. Absolutely. Again, though, where we get caught, and I'll throw this back to you guys if you find, is you guys are, oh my gosh, 4, entities. But you think of a big company with 4 big divisions or whatever, it's the same.
Totally.
But on saying that, what we have done several sort of focused and then diverse focus and diverse is you got to be careful, especially as it's so competitive now. Where do we focus, right? Where can we have the biggest impact? So this is part of that pause where we say, okay, do we continue these initiatives or do we not? Should we put effort in them? So again, Jeremy, Peter will hear, we do all kinds of fun stuff on the side, like we did a our climate and sport initiative, which we linked the engagement of people, particularly sports fans, moms, with the health impacts of climate change on sports. And we started with hockey, right? So love this idea, got it going. But 2 years, it didn't get a lot of uptake, right? So, you got to make the hard decision, even though it's a passion play, we got to pass it on. We got to find a not-for-profit who will take it and do something with it, because it becomes too much of a distraction. And then the business suffers, and then, right, you stretch people. So that's always the again, I guess an entrepreneur's learning, as we all know, we got to watch the shining objects and the passion plays sometimes. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Any advice for folks that are getting into this space?
Any advice? Wow. One is, make sure you hire people who are smarter than you. You hear that often, and it is so true, and that they have different perspectives. Number 2 is, and I'm going to play back one of the young women who I mentor talked about imposter syndrome, and asked me if I ever had that, and I said, "Oh my God, I have it every day." Right? Like it's like don't think that you're alone, that you think you can't do this, because I have a feeling pretty much everybody feels that at some point during the week. Yeah, right, Jeremy?
Today, yeah. I literally opened up about somebody like, I feel like such imposter syndrome today.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. 3 is you got to know it's hard, right? Like entrepreneurship, running a business is not easy, period. So if you're not up for the 60 hours a week, or getting on planes if you have to, or rolling up your sleeve, then maybe think twice about a different career path, because, balance is nice. Balance for me is over a year, not on a week to week basis, because there's no way. That's not possible
You're not doing a consistent 37.5, Mike?
No.
Do tell.
No. I've found the most rewarding things in life were hard.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, great. Yeah, great piece, Dan. Yeah.
Mike, so I got actually 3 questions left on my list, and Jeremy might have some more. So I want to talk about making tangible ways people can apply. And you talked about the B Corp, where you're measuring yourself against reality a little bit. So is there any one policy that you put in as part of the B Corp process, or since, that you are really proud of, and you think, even if you don't become a B Corp, or you are a B Corp, but you don't have this policy, every company should have this in place?
So now, on which aspect, like environment or social?
No.
Oh, wow,
you pick. That's like dealer's choice here, Mike. You get to pick which angle, because there's a starting point. And I remember you telling me about your blind interviewing process, and you have. I mean, you're an inspiration to me personally on what you guys have in place, but there needs to be a starting point, because the B Corp application process is a friggin' lot of work. It's daunting. Yeah. Not everybody's going to go there tomorrow, but everybody can change one policy for the betterment. You can pick an environment and a people one, or pick one of you name it.
You know what I'm going to do, actually, because you just reminded me about our conversation with your team, right? And what you did, and what what we encourage our clients, and what I encourage everybody to do is, there's not one policy, that,
silver
as
bullet.
You said, like it's what is most important to you, right? So, for me, when I took over Delphi, giving back was the most important. So I convinced the board that we're going to give 1% of our gross sales to charity, and made that happen, right? And I'm proud of that because of how much we've given back. But it could be passing a policy that you're not going to pay anybody 5 times more than the lowest paid person, or 3 times more, or right? Or you're going to put in an overtime policy, or you're going to put a mental health, channel in, and support system. Whatever it is, to me, you want to align it with the values and what's most important in the organization. And to be honest, at the beginning, that's often the leader, right? People are looking to you as the leader for that. So what is of most importance to you? And then tackle that piece and get a couple of wins, and then broaden it. And when you broaden it, that's when you definitely engage all aspects, all your team members in that, and get them involved, because then great stuff comes out, which you never thought about, and you can start to tackle. But definitely start small and think big,
So you had to give a nuanced answer. You couldn't have just given me the black and white right answer.
Yeah,
oh my! No. All right. So then my second one out of my 3. So I'm going to come back to your roots on, saving the planet. Is there if you had to put a challenge out to every organization, they could do one thing in that specific direction that is a non-starter, everybody should be doing this. This is a given, something that's achievable and doable. What would be your challenge to all organizations out there?
Yeah, everybody needs to be looking at when I say greenhouse gas footprint, the energy they use,
Okay.
Whether it's through travel, car, train, plane, whether it's heating the office, whatever it is, even paper, procurement and that.
Yeah.
How do you reduce that? How can you reduce that? Pick one thing at least. If you can pick more, go for it. But we have to figure this out. And we all have to start individually and in our companies to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases going into the atmosphere, because that is our biggest challenge by far.
Totally. And we can all pick something there. So my last one, and I know you've got a lot of runway ahead of you with more organizations and mentorship and a lot to give with your heart, which I know well. If you were to look back on this career, do you have a proudest moment, something that you're like, this will ultimately be my legacy? Is there something that stands out to you? I know you've done a ton of shit, Mike, all over the place, and I hope you're bloody proud. I know a lot of people around you are, but is there something that stands out to you?
Someone asked this to me, and I use the story there that you've heard me tell about, having a collapse, and it goes back to you need to go into the abyss sometimes to come out and find the light. Is the proudest moment I had is when, I had and it's a long story, so I won't go into it, but for the audience, basically I was on that treadmill of success, and I was on a plane, and I was working 60, 80, 100 hours a week to drive growth in the company when I first took over. And we had an amazing tech speaker. Again, long story short, his basic message was, be careful what you wish for. And it hit me between the eyes, because I realized that I had mortgaged my family's life for half a dozen years. and paid the price physically and mentally in that, and collapsed. And my business partners picked me up. I got help, took a month off, and then got together with my partner and said, right, we're not doing that again. And that's when we totally shifted back to the culture of what we're about, which is treating everybody with dignity and respect, sticking to, a balance, again, a year, but a balanced approach. Yep. Focusing on what's important, which is family, friends, mental health, physical health, spiritual health, right? And the rest will come. And it has.
Totally.
Am I retired and a millionaire now? No. Do I care? No, I don't. Because it's the journey, right?
Yeah.
You're not happy once you retire. You're happy as you traverse along this journey of life, which has a lot of ups and downs. And so I'm most proud that we've stuck to that and will stick to it, until I'm gone. And then it's up to the next generation of leaders that take over the company. But we will try to do everything we can to make the time that people spend at Delphi special, and that we treat all our clients and partners and everybody with dignity and respect and the best we can, rather than going after some money thing.
Yeah. I happen to know a couple of those people at your place, and so I'm pretty sure they feel that way. Actually, I know that. Jeremy, any last thoughts before we close it up?
I think that was a beautiful way to wrap, and hopefully we can all treat each other with dignity and respect. And Mike, amazing talking with you. Your fingerprints are all over positive change for decades. And that's quite the legacy. Yes. So thank you for doing it, and doing it before it was cool.
No, thank you. And before it was cool. Nice. Yeah, no, it's true. Well, and I have to say, right, this isn't about me, right? This is just an amazing group of people that I've got the opportunity to work with. And back to earlier in our conversation, we can only do this together, Mm-hmm. So yeah, Jeremy, I hope we get the chance to work together. And if you can't bring your company up here, maybe I can bring Leading Change down there. So
that would be great. I'd love to see that.
With you.
And appreciate the conversation.
Totally. Yeah, you too, guys.
Mike, as we wrap up, where's the best place people can find you or reach out or learn more?
Yeah, they can always reach out through LinkedIn. Go to the website. You'll see my email there. I'm open as anything, but please reach out if you have any questions. Love talking to folks. And if there are any young people that want an information interview, I'm always open to that as well. So don't hesitate to contact me.
Great.
Mike, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you. As your friend, it's funny to interview you as well. But I have to tell you, I remain inspired, and so proud to call you a friend. And, none of us are perfect, but I really, there's a lot that you're doing. And I'll say that to you too, Jeremy. Both of you guys are really inspired me to raise the bar of Karma Dharma. And so I'm really proud to have both of you in my life.
Thanks, Peter. Me too, bud. Right back at you. And I'm so proud to see you changing the way you're doing things and taking it to heart. So we'll give you a big hug next time I see you. All right.
Deal.